Sarah Sims, and you're watching the latest edition of my Dance Music Masterclass for computer music. This month, you'll learn how to create a few elements for a rave-style techno track. When you're creating this type of track, you'll want to start off with a kick, some bass. I have a rolling bass and a sub bass, some hats. These are all hats from 909 samples, and you might want to use something like a shaker as well. Add in some claps, once again 909 claps, and you can throw in a loop or two for some extra percussive flair. Next you'll want to add like an atmospheric kind of background synth, and I've included exactly how I made this synth if you read this month's edition of Computer Music. You can go through how I created the sound and then also all the processing that I used. We're going to have a look at how to build the trance synth, which is the main melodic synth in this track. And here's how it sounds just using the synth, not any of the processing. So to start off, I used Ableton's operator here. On oscillator 1, I've chosen basic shapes, and I've turned up the oscillator processing amount to 67% and detuned it by 20 cents. Oscillator 2 also uses the same basic shapes here, and I've taken the frequency in the filter section, and I've dragged that over to the matrix here, and it's modulating envelope 2 with a value of 9.4. Let's move on to some of the processing here. First device I'm using is from Ableton. It's an overdrive, and I'm using a bandpass filter focused around 3.3K, and the dry wet is set to 17%. Next I have OTT. This is adding a bit of power, some aggression, giving it almost a sharper sound here, and I've turned up the output for each of the 3 frequency bands. I'm using an EQ next to shape the sound, and I'm rolling off some of the lows below 270, boosting around 500, and then cutting off some of the high frequencies above 10K. For movement, I'm using Ableton's Echo, and I've chosen a 16th note echo here. I'm using the ping pong echo, and I'm also using a bandpass filter, so this echo is really centered around the mids, and the dry wet is turned up to about 22%. Here's how it sounds with echo. Next I'm using the auto filter, and I'm rolling off all the frequencies that are above 5K. So the sound is really centered around the mids. Next I have a parallel reverb chain here, and to create a chain in Ableton, you just have to right click and you can go create chain, and then you can drag your devices or plugins directly onto this chain here. I'll just delete this one. So in building this, I first used a reverb with a pre-delay of 22.3 milliseconds, decay of 2.52 seconds, and the dry wet is turned up to 100% because I'm controlling the volume of this reverb chain with the volume of the chain that's over here. So it's set to -2 decibels. Here's how the reverb sounds. Next up is a compressor, and I have the side chain turned on, and it's receiving the signal from the trance synth. So the trance synth is being fed back into this compressor here, or sorry, the trance synth is triggering the compressor, giving this a very compressed sound here. And if I solo out the top part of this chain here, that's how it sounds. The dry chain, there's nothing on it at all. It's just the signal from operator and then all the processing that I've done up until the parallel reverb. We can mix these two together. You just set the different volume levels to taste. And that's how it sounds here. To finish off the processing, I have a compressor. It's a sidechain compressor, and it's receiving signal from the kick group here, or it's sidechained to the kick group. I think a sidechain compressor would be even more important if your melody plays on beat 1, or a lot of the beats where your kick drum plays. And you could also use Nicky Romeo's Kickstart 2 as a sidechain compressor as well. So that's it for the processing on this melodic trance synth. The other important factor is, of course, the melody. So it's a very simple kind of like sparse, almost like minimal melody. It's pretty catchy and repetitive, and it repeats 4 times. So that's also a key component to a track like this as well. And the last element that I have is the synth stab. Let's just play that together with the trance melody. So it has like a bit of a drum and bass flavor. I'll just turn it up a little bit in the mix. Let's go ahead, we'll listen to this loop one more time. So that's how to build one element and just kind of learn a bit about the foundations of creating a rave-style techno track. Thanks so much for tuning in to my dance music masterclass, and make sure to check back next month for the next edition.